Now comes for the fun part where we do a bit of a table exercise for both of you, or as I used to call it back in my day when I was a geek, tabletop role playing. So the two of you are going to be, in your respective roles, but at a fictional company. Let's call it Questionable Ideas Are Us. Is a company that we're going to kind of like role play this scenarios out with the time that we have. Welcome to the Information Week podcast. I'm Senior Editor Jean-Pierre Ruth, and in this Breaking Bread session, we are joined by Michael Fanning, CISO for Splunk, and we also have Andie Dovgan, Chief Growth Officer for Creatio. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Awesome, great. Michael, Andie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us. It's great to be here.
All right. So in this Breaking Bread episode, we're going to be taking a look at how will you staff your AI workforce, looking at some of the kind of ins and outs and ups and downs of where we are in the current climate of things, where there's a lot of effort to make AI part of how, if not everyone, many elements of an organization are operating, trying to look to be more efficient, looking at different ways that people might be applying their skills in their organization. So we're going to take a look both on the tech side of things, where Michael's going to be kind of filling in his perspective, and then from the kind of the business and operation side of things, and then he's going to offer his perspectives on how they look at what it means to have AI as part of the way not only the organization in a broad sense, but like the workforce within the organization might be part of their day-to-day or more significant strategies. So let's start off with like a big question for the both of you. How are you right now looking at structuring your workforce, whether it's the skills or who you're trying to draw in to use AI for the future for your respective roles?
Yeah,
Michael, do you want to start?
Sure, happy to take that one. For me, what I look for is very similar to what I've looked for in the past, which is individuals who can join the organization who understand how to gain efficiencies in their day-to-day work. But the way that used to be was, we wanted members of our security operations center to demonstrate, do you understand how to automate pieces of your day-to-day workflow? And can you just be somebody that goes beyond just the run book for triaging and alert? And can you actually, do you understand Python, for example, where you can build your own automation? AI, I think, and where it still is that same mindset, but I think it kind of lowers that barrier to entry for understanding how you can be kind of more efficient in your day-to-day. So same type of people, same kind of mindset, not a huge change, just really hammering home on understanding efficiency, automation, where it's valuable, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And I would echo to that. So the broader view is that you look at technology and AI specifically as a skill. And now, because the barrier gets lower and we democratize access to technology, now we think about the skill in a very similar way how we think about, presentation skills or our communication skills. We need to make sure that a broader employee set knows how to use AI to do their job more efficiently. And this comes with how do we hire for AI skill set? How do we train, enable people? What kind of process we have to support our staff to be more comfortable with AI automation? Because, like, for example, if you are in a sales organization and you don't know how to use AI and you prefer to do things old way, probably can survive a couple of years or even a decade. But right now, with all the transformations that is happening within the go-to-market space and the expansion of AI, specifically in the customer facing roles, you have to get more comfortable with AI because it's changing the nature of your job.
Awesome. Great. And thank you both for your inputs on that question. All right, Michael, let's start off with a question leaning more into the tech side. So how do you go about really vetting AI that could be introduced for this efficiencies and redundancies in the workforce? But how do you really kind of go about the idea of we want to make sure from a technical side of things, like this is not only just meeting the needs, but also for like the sense of like security and efficacy, like, okay, this is great. This is going to look like it's going to work faster. but we also want to make sure that we are doing it in, whatever those elements that you want to make sure are going to be functionally appropriate for what your organization is looking for.
Yeah, you really touched on a great point, which is what is near and dear to me, which is how do we kind of ensure that the AI that we're bringing into our organization is secure. And from my perspective, what that looks like is how do we ensure that we're not necessarily leaking any sensitive intellectual property, internal data outside of the boundary that we control within our infrastructure. The way that we kind of typically tend to approach that is just through a vendor vetting process that would ultimately involve a threat model around the implementation of whatever we choose to bring in-house. So before we even bring in choose to go through the procurement process, we're going to vet the vendor. We're going to understand how they protect any data that we might be sending to them before we actually agree to do business with them. And then before we operationalize the technology internally, it's going to go through a threat modeling process with our internal engineering teams to help us understand where the risk exposure might be so that we understand how we're going to use it more safely and in a responsible way internally.
Great, thank you for that. All right, Andie, let's go for your side of the equation. When you're looking at how AI might be part of the operations and the business side of things, what kind of roles, whether they're actively right now or potentially in the future, do you see? Now, I'm not saying eliminate, but I'm saying might be affected or influenced by adding AI into the mix of what the day-to-day or longer-term efforts for roles might see.
Of course. I believe that there was a study by McKinsey about 2 years ago that identified key areas of the organization that will be impacted the most. And I do believe that those areas probably are very, very accurate. So think about all three angles of go-to-market organization, sales, marketing, customer service. Like everything that is touching a customer and has direct interaction is definitely seriously disrupted with the expansion of AI. And then the fourth big aspect is software development. The way how we develop software, the way how we scale business automation is also hugely impacted because now we have the ability to bring people that are not technical and add them into the mix of the configuration, digital transformation that is happening with more AI-driven no-code tools that can now solve more complex enterprise-level problems. So I think that those four areas are impacted the most, and we probably can add one additional, everything that is touching a lot of documents, a lot of information that require significant data analysis. Of course, one can argue in regards to the real accuracy you can get from a data analysis with AI, but it's very difficult to argue how you can really simplify the work of people that are working through legal processing or all sorts of different heavy document types of roles that now can be significantly streamlined with the help of AI because it does it so perfectly well.
Great, awesome. Thank you for that. All right, now this question is actually for both of you. It's a two-part question, or kind of. So we just talked a bit about some roles. So let's talk about a little bit further. What kind of roles, or how do you find the balance between the roles that can be potentially be made more efficient through AI, but then roles that there might be some question about entrusting AI enhancement due to might be sensitivity of the role itself or what is touched on, or the security, regulatory compliance. What are some of the kind of the pauses for either of you to say, hey, from the security side, we got to think about how we're approaching this, or just from a regulatory side. But then there's also the desire for efficiency. Both of you actually, your thoughts.
I can give it a go. I have a couple of thoughts about this, and I'm sure Michael will add in. So the way how we think about this in Creatio is that we think about this kind of human and AI agent collaboration, where AI agent should do everything that a human being hates doing. So everything that can be delegated, everything that you're not excited to do in your work should be potentially delegated to AI agent. And this comes from multiple different sort of things. And in regards to the roles, we saw roles that have that can have an extreme potential of augmentation. That's probably something that you will start with automation first. And AI, as any other automation, it is contextual, meaning that you don't want to introduce AI just in the sake of using new technology. You want to make sure that you can impact either your bottom line or your top line, and you want to drive that efficiency and productivity. So all the roles that have direct correlation, connection to the ability to do their job quicker without introducing risk should be covered by AI. And there are also roles that probably are not the first adopters of AI. GP, you mentioned about compliance, you mentioned about things that have a high sensitivity and have a high potential risk, particularly dependent on AI hallucinations. Because sometimes we trust AI and it's getting better and better, and LLMs really evolve, but still there's a likelihood that it's probably not going to get the best answer, or the answer will be somehow not accurate. And all roles that have this element should be more cautious about it. But in general, I think that the automation at this point, with the current state of development of technologies, should use the concept of human in the loop, where human workers and AI agents work together, but not necessarily allowing AI to do stuff autonomously. Because there's lots of hype and buzz around AI, autonomous work done by AI, and about agents and networks of agents. But I think there's a degree of skepticism here, because you want to introduce a concept that is that has more control and that allows you to get all of those advantages without significantly increase the risk element within your organization.
Completely agree with Andie, and I'll just build on top of that a little bit. We often talk about the human in the loop with the products that we develop internally at Splunk. And if we use the Security Operations Center as an example, and this future of automating more of these SOC workflows, you don't want to just remove the human being from the ultimate decision of do I take this computer offline or this instance offline because AI says that I should. Like, before you actually execute on some of these decisions that can be impactful to your infrastructure, you do need to have that validation from the human. So I think, kind of going back to the earlier, like, what do we think about? Who do we hire for? It continues to be those who understand the efficiencies, but they also still need to understand the concepts, the fundamentals, how these different systems work, so that they can, again, when AI comes and makes these recommendations and they've automated workflow, they validate that actually is the correct action to take.
Gotcha. Okay, great. All right, let's get to one more question for the both of you, and then we'll get to the fun part. All right, so is full AI really necessary to kind of deliver on the efficiencies that a lot of organizations are looking for? Or can there be some things that are done with maybe less intensive automated resources that don't have that very robust AI that is, of course, making headlines, and that's what we're all obviously talking about in the tech news these days. But are there things that are maybe that are just enough to kind of like deliver the efficiencies that can do the work that maybe they're overlooked or don't have as much flash on them at this particular point? Just your thoughts on that, both of you.
Michael.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of both. So if you're familiar with the SOAR, Security Orchestration and Automated Response System, that's with the Splunk SOAR, for example, you plug Python playbooks into it, Python scripts into it, and it can automate different workflows. So, for example, a very, very simple automation that just stands up an incident response framework for you. Your incident bridge, your Slack channels, all of your kind of workspaces where you're going to work in. It's something that used to take, maybe a half an hour for our teams to set up, which now, for each incident, now that's, 15 seconds as you execute a SOAR runbook. So I think that's an area where, you can still get by with some kind of fundamental scripting knowledge and Python knowledge. But, AI, where I've seen it really kind of help out, our teams is like writing an incident report. So like what AI can do is just can distill all of this information that came from that incident, all of the case notes, and then write an executive summary that can go out that can then just be shipped from an incident responder back out to the executive leadership team. And something that we're seeing, kind of working on again internally, been super, super helpful. So it's still, that's not something that you would necessarily think about automating with a SOAR or with scripts, but that's where something where AI can, again, kind of grab those pieces that matter, and create that report that just, again, expedites the ultimate workflow, the overall workflow for a responder and an analyst. Andie, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, and I think that it depends really on a company strategy. Like, I think there's this huge FOMO going on with all organizations that really don't want to be left behind, and they think about AI being an accelerator of all sorts of different processes that they run. And if an organization wants to be current, if the organization has a strategy to continuously expand their business, they should be thinking about AI as a catalyst of that change in a way that is aligned with their strategy and things that they're trying to deploy. We are working in the go-to-market automation space, and that we see that a lot from sales leaders, from marketing leaders, from leaders that drive the business forward. We see that a lot of them are very anxious about the element of AI because this anxiety comes from the fact that their competitors might be adopting it faster, might be more productive. Similar applies to the development effort and some technical effort. If I can be much more efficient, if I can build my product 3 times faster, then in a long run, in a 3-5 years run, I will be so further away that you won't be able to compete with me. So that's an idea that is driving this anxiety and that turns into an action with a lot of decision happening with deploying AI. Organizations and parts of organizations that are not in that chase and that race, I think that they can be a little bit more conservative in regards to deciding how to apply AI and where it makes sense. Also, I think that everything that is driven by this form of anxiety has a lot of elements of a buzz and a lot of elements that it's not always well thought through. But in the same time, it does bring a lot of energy and drive into this process. So I think that it's really contextual and depends on what an organization wants to achieve and what type of a market and environment they're at.
Great. All right. Great insights for those questions. All right. Now it comes to the fun part where we do a bit of a table exercise for both of you, or as I used to call it back in my day when I was a geek, tabletop role play. So the two of you are going to be, in your respective roles, but at a fictional company. Let's call it Questionable Ideas Are Us. Is a company that you're going to kind of like role play this out with the time that we have. Okay. All right. Now, for Questionable Ideas Are Us, your CEO opens the floor for teams to develop concepts for new products and services, makes it a priority for the coming quarter, and has encouraged AI to be part of the ideation process. Now, in their zeal, at least one team may have used an unauthorized third-party AI that may have ingested some proprietary data from your company in the process. The CEO loves what the team came up with. Their idea stood out from the others. How do you start the conversation with the CEO and the team about balancing data risk in the situation versus nurturing their ideation efforts with AI?
Yeah, it sounds like this is in Mike's wheelhouse.
You're both. Yeah, Andie, you're in part of this too because they're looking at growth. And anyway, we're going to come to you, Andie, but we were trying to grow really fast. So it's and a growth question. So how's this going to go? And both of you, the same team together, collaborate.
Yeah. Andie, I think, our job is to help to, enable you and enable the company to kind of go through that process in a way that's safe and responsible. And I think, there's a variety of governance related aspects through policy and things that we, write down and we say, this is what you can and can't do. And then you balance that with the right technical guardrails that help to even prevent the scenario that, was just described here from happening. We don't want to necessarily be completely frictionless, but you do need to have some amount of friction in the process that prevents somebody from, dumping all of their data from SharePoint or Confluence or whatever it may be and sending it out to some. That data, by the way, is gone forever. That is now owned by the LLM that ingested it somewhere on the internet. You will never get it back. So it's important to understand that that is what just happened, and we need to understand, how we're going to have a strategy for that in the future.
No, look, and I fully support this. I think that in this particular scenario, the risk overwhelms the potential benefit. First, I think that at the ideation stage, I do have a lot of belief in human and in creativity and the ability to generate idea with the help of AI, of course. But I think there's a lot of things that you can do without AI too. But in this particular scenario, I fully agree. I think that it should be a policy that guides teams, business teams that have a little bit less knowledge in technology about which tools they can select, how they need to select it, how they need to use it, and specifically about using the proprietary knowledge and data, because this is the DNA of the company. So I agree that it needs to be a guardrail in a setting where we can collaborate and use technology, but not necessarily in a way that it creates damage for individuals, but also for the company.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think the big takeaway for me is to be proactive, right, and to not wait for the scenario to happen. And so plan now. Have AI governance as part of your strategy. Have the overall technical capabilities and security guardrails as part of your strategy today, and start to solve this problem today. Again, to just avoid these risks in the future that have just been described here.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's EJP. We sold it.
The CEO of questionable ideas are us is of questionable wisdom, and we'll take your ideas under advisement, but want to proceed ahead. So, all right. Now, questionable ideas is developing its next big campaign and project. The teams have been leaning heavily on AI resources to work faster and more efficiently. It's been going so well. Management has determined that there are some redundancies. You're not involved in that. Some redundancies, and there are some staff separations. While the work proceeds on the project, word soon comes of both a longtime rival to your company and also a niche startup suddenly pursuing the same pain points that you're aiming to solve with your company's project. Now, these rivals are claiming that they're just using comparable AI to come to comparable conclusions as your company, and never mind that they may or may not have poached former colleagues onto their staff. While the legal department is weighing its options, dealing with that mess, how do you then address the internal challenges of encouraging staff to develop original ideas as they use AI, but then also ideas that don't lead into sameness?
I probably can start. So I guess there are multiple ways, and coming back actually to our discussion, there is also a discussion of enablement and training, and being able to understand how to go about it, and how to strike this balance between human workers and AI agents, and help from the AI. I think that everyone who collaborates in this project, they need to be properly instructed, certified, and enabled to be able to operate in that new environment, but using the same guardrails. So that's probably an immediate response. So I think that it's a shame that a new startup got emerged, and it's a shame that some people who were working on this project left for competition. So I think the company could have done a little bit better job of trying to find new roles and new ways how to keep people, specifically if they're so productive that they were able to enable a startup or a competitive organization, and they were able to bridge the gap. So I think that there is some learnings to be done on the company side to understand how to utilize the talent in a better way, even though redundancies will happen and the roles will change. But how can we utilize the human talent so that we're not losing the competitive edge?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll kind of look at this through the security lens, which is kind of on both sides of the company. On one side of it is how do you prevent the theft of any intellectual property from somebody that's actually leaving, your organization, regardless of where they're going to, right? So you typically kind of see, from an insider perspective, during that notice period is when you're at the greatest risk of the exfiltration of anything, intellectual. And that's not just source code. That's sales information, right? So you need to have the right technical controls and again, policies in place for how you even prevent that exfiltration. And then on the other side of that is the infiltration, right? It's one thing if somebody comes in with the knowledge, but if they're actually coming in with, documentation and they're able to bring that into your organization and into those systems that you control, that's also a big problem, right? So I think there's a balance on both sides that allow for the kind of the fair competition amongst each other.
Okay, all right. You seem to be both trying to do your best to save questionable ideas are us. We'll see if we can round this out with one last quick scenario that you can hopefully bring this company home and preserve it from its own shenanigans. Okay, it is go time for the big project. Questionable ideas are us has leveraged AI for many layers of the project, from customer analysis to content generation for marketing. It launches on time and under budget. The results, however, are off target, and it does not land in the market as hoped. There are complaints of disconnect with the target audience or customers in terms of the branding, and that the end result of the project really is not that much different from what rivals have been putting out there in terms of what you're working on. After some internal review, it seems that the teams let AI shoulder more of the work than management originally expected them to. The teams point out that they were more efficient, and but there's also evidence of data set bias that was not reviewed in the process, along with overall reduced engagement and input by the staff. How do you handle the staff discussion about human oversight of AI versus speed of delivery?
I think that it's very similar to any management station. I don't believe that AI makes leadership and management any different. Actually, I do believe that AI amplifies the need for good leadership and good management. Think about, in this case, AI being just an additional helper or assistant in the work, but does this discount your expectations for excellence? Does this discount your expectation for market superiority? Does this discount the right culture? So when you release it under the budget and within the time frame, are you proud of what you're putting out there? And do you have the strong sense that this will be a competitive product that will help to elevate your organization? So I think this is a great example how companies shouldn't be distracted with the help of AI and those productivity. It's similar, like imagine that you want to write the best book in the world in whatever genre you decide to do so. Of course, you can use a little bit of help from AI, and we've been seeing some of those news where authors have been relying on it somehow. But it won't make it a bestseller unless you put your heart and soul and the hard work into it. And I think that leaders and managers should think about that way. You can be more productive, you can be more efficient, but AI in this case would never substitute a human being. And leadership and management and right process and right quality control and right standards are never been so important as now with the cheap access to productivity acceleration.
I think Andie and I are completely aligned on this one at Bad Ideas Inc. Nothing else necessarily to add, but yeah, AI can go so far, but it's not going to necessarily, replace the leadership, executive decisions, right? I think, yeah, totally nailed it. Completely agree.
Yeah, it's funny that we blame leadership, but we're kind of supposed to be part of the leadership team in this fiction company.
Right.
So
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully the CEO of Questionable Ideas, Bad Ideas Are Us will take your ideas to heart. But there will be future incidences as we continue the table exercises and future episodes. Andie, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. You've been fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing your insight and actually collaborating to try and save this company full of shenanigans from its own foolishness.
This has been fun. Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you.